My name is Callum Hayes, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had a perfect life. I'm 35, an experienced software engineer working for a leading cybersecurity firm. My job is demanding, and I often travel for client meetings, but it pays well and has given me a comfortable life. I have always been someone who believes in loyalty, honesty, and commitment. I grew up watching my parents share a strong, loving marriage, and I always thought I would have the same. I never once imagined that the woman I vowed to love forever would betray me in the worst possible way. Her name is Sienna Carter, the woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, and the woman who ultimately shattered my trust into a million irreparable pieces. Sienna and I met 6 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. She was everything I could have wanted: intelligent, charming, beautiful, and driven. She had this aura about her that made people gravitate toward her, a natural charisma that could light up a room. From the moment we met, we clicked instantly. We dated for 2 years before getting married. It felt right. She was my best friend, my lover, my partner in crime. She had big ambitions in the corporate world, and I supported her every step of the way. We bought a modern townhouse in a nice part of the city, decorated it together, and talked about starting a family one day. For the first few years, our marriage was good. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always worked through them. Or at least that's what I thought. Looking back now, I realize I was blind. The cracks had been forming long before I noticed them. It started with little things. Sienna used to text me constantly during the day, sending little messages about how her meetings were going or asking what I wanted for dinner. Then, those texts became less frequent. She used to be excited when I came home from my business trips, greeting me with a hug and a long conversation about how much she missed me. But lately, I noticed that she barely reacted when I walked through the door.
Sometimes, she'd just glance up from her phone and say, "Hey, how was your trip?" before going back to whatever she was doing. I dismissed it at first. I figured she was just stressed from work. Sienna was always career-driven. She worked as a senior marketing manager at a prestigious firm, and she had always been determined to climb the corporate ladder. In the past year, she had been putting in longer hours, taking more business trips, and spending more time with her colleagues. I told myself this was normal, that she was just ambitious and hardworking, the same way she had always been. But something felt different. Her excuses started sounding rehearsed. Her work events became more frequent. Late-night meetings, weekend conferences, company retreats that seemed to appear out of nowhere. She started being more protective of her phone, turning it over whenever I walked by. One night, as we lay in bed, I reached over to grab her phone to check the time. She snatched it away instantly, faster than I had ever seen her move before. "What are you doing?" she asked sharply. I frowned. "I was just checking the time. My phone's charging in the other room." She let out a nervous laugh, turning off the screen. "You scared me. I thought you were going to read my emails." It was such a strange response. Why would I care about her emails? The first real red flag came a few weeks later. Sienna was supposed to be out with her coworkers for a networking event. That evening, I was cleaning up her car when I spotted something unusual. A men's watch wedged between the passenger seat and the center console. It wasn't mine. I picked it up, inspecting it. It was expensive. A brand I knew cost thousands of dollars. My chest tightened. Whose watch was this? When she came home that night, I casually held up the watch and asked, "Hey, do you know whose this is?" Her eyes flickered to the watch in my hand, and for just a second, I saw something I had never seen before. Panic. But it disappeared just as quickly. She let out a small laugh, walking over to me and plucking it from my fingers. "Oh, this? It belongs to Ethan, one of my coworkers. I gave him a ride after work the other day, and he must have dropped it. I'll return it to him tomorrow." Her explanation was smooth, too perfect. Something about the way she said it made my stomach churn, but I forced myself to nod, because I wanted to believe her.
because the alternative, the possibility that my wife, the woman I loved, could be lying to me, was too painful to consider. After that night, something shifted in me. I started paying closer attention. I noticed how she would smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed how she would turn her body slightly away when she was texting. I noticed how she had started wearing perfume on nights she claimed to be working late, something she never used to do. But I still wasn't sure. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was imagining things because I had spent so much time away on business trips, and my own guilt was making me question her loyalty. But then came the night when all my doubts became impossible to ignore. It was a Friday. I had planned something special, a romantic dinner at home. I cooked her favorite meal, set the table with candles, even bought a bottle of her favorite wine. When she walked through the door, she barely looked at the setup. "Oh, this looks nice," she said vaguely, dropping her purse on the counter. She didn't seem happy. She didn't seem excited. And then, before I could say anything, she added, "I'm so sorry, babe, but I have to go back out. Last-minute work thing. It's important." I stared at her, my heart sinking. "Sienna, it's Friday night. Can't it wait until Monday?" She hesitated. "I really can't. It's a team dinner. My boss expects me to be there." She was already walking toward the bedroom, pulling off her jacket. And that's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this go. As she showered and got ready, I grabbed my spare work phone and carefully slipped it into her bag. It was old, something I barely used, but it had GPS tracking. By the time she walked out of the house, looking effortlessly beautiful in her black dress and red lipstick, I had already made up my mind. I was going to follow her. And for the first time, I was truly afraid of what I might find. I watched as Sienna walked out of the house, completely oblivious to what I had just done. She looked stunning. Her black dress hugged her figure perfectly, and the red lipstick made her lips stand out in a way that once made me weak. But tonight, all I could feel was a sinking sensation in my chest. I had spent years trusting her, believing in our marriage, supporting her career. Yet, the more I tried to rationalize things, the more the nagging doubts crept in. I sat on the couch, my hands gripping the phone tightly as I opened the tracking app. The small blinking dot on the screen showed her moving further away, heading towards the city. This was it. I needed to know. I grabbed my keys and jacket, took a deep breath, and stepped outside. The night air was cool, but my skin felt hot, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Sliding into my car, I started the engine and followed the blinking dot, keeping a safe distance. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, she really was heading to a company dinner. Maybe I was overreacting, letting my fears get the best of me. But then I saw where she stopped. It wasn't at a restaurant. It wasn't at her office. It was a hotel. I pulled over a few blocks away, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat echoing in my ears. I stared at the glowing hotel sign in the distance, the entrance illuminated by golden lights. I waited. A few minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, and my stomach twisted when I saw him. It was him. I recognized him from the photo on Sienna's work website. Ethan, the so-called co-worker who had left his expensive watch in her car. He walked up to the hotel entrance with the confidence of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. And then, just as I feared, Sienna emerged from her car, walking towards him. She smiled at him. She touched his arm. And then, without hesitation, he leaned in and kissed her. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached, my entire body rigid as I forced myself to keep watching. I needed to see it with my own eyes. They walked inside the hotel together, his hand resting on the small of her back as if she belonged to him. I gripped the steering wheel, torn between the urge to storm inside and demand answers, to scream at them both, to make them feel the kind of pain that was now consuming me. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, staring at the hotel, my mind racing. Would confronting her change anything? Would it make her regret it? Would she suddenly realize she had made a terrible mistake and beg for forgiveness? No, because this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. She had been lying to me for months, deceiving me, looking me in the eyes and telling me she loved me, all while sneaking around behind my back. I leaned back in my seat, exhaling a shaky breath. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation. I wasn't going to waste another second letting her dictate how I felt. She wasn't worth it. Instead, I reached for my phone and snapped a few pictures. Clear, undeniable evidence of her betrayal. Then, without another glance, I put my car in gear and drove away. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The thought of walking into the house we shared, the bed we slept in together, the memories we had built, it made me feel sick. So I just drove. I had no destination, no plan, only the overwhelming need to escape. Eventually, I found myself on the outskirts of the city, pulling into a quiet parking lot near a rundown diner. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I had spent so many years picturing a future with Sienna, a house, kids, growing old together. And now, it felt like all of that had been nothing more than a cruel illusion. I rested my head against the seat, closing my eyes. I needed to think. I needed a plan. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to stay in this marriage any longer. I refused to be the fool who stayed, who forgave, who let himself be manipulated by a woman who had already moved on. I was going to leave, but I wasn't going to do it with anger. I wasn't going to give her the fight she probably expected. No. I was going to walk away so quietly, so completely, that by the time she realized what she had lost, it would be far too late. I pulled out my phone and did something I never thought I would. I looked up apartments for rent. It was time to disappear from her life. For good. I sat in my car outside that rundown diner for what felt like hours. The neon sign flickered, casting a dull glow onto the cracked pavement. Inside, a handful of tired souls nursed their coffees, lost in their own worlds. I should have felt exhausted, drained from the emotional wreckage of the past few hours. But instead, I felt clear-headed for the first time in months. I had my answer. I had proof. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't even going to confront her. I was simply going to walk away. She wouldn't even see it coming. I pulled out my phone, ignoring the unread messages from Sienna that had popped up over the past hour. They were probably her usual excuses. "Babe, work dinner ran late. I'll be home soon." God, I'm exhausted. Longest night ever. Love you. See you soon. I stared at those words, my grip tightening around the phone. It was almost funny. She had no idea I had been there, no idea I had seen everything, but she would soon. I scrolled past her messages and instead opened a browser, searching for short-term apartment rentals. I wasn't going to rush into a permanent place yet. I just needed somewhere temporary, somewhere far enough that she wouldn't be able to find me. After half an hour of searching, I found the perfect spot, a furnished one-bedroom apartment on the opposite side of the city, available immediately. It wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. I sent a message to the landlord, asking if I could come by in the morning to sign the lease. It was happening. I was leaving. I got back home around 3 a.m. The house was dark, silent. The home we had built together now felt foreign to me, like a place I no longer belonged. Sienna was asleep in our bedroom, curled up under the covers, looking peaceful, like she hadn't just spent the night with another man. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her. If I hadn't followed her tonight, I might have come home, crawled into bed beside her, and fallen asleep still believing the lie. The thought made my stomach churn. I turned away. Instead of going to bed, I grabbed a duffel bag from the hall closet and started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. I moved quietly, methodically. Sienna didn't stir. As I packed, my eyes fell on a framed photo on our dresser. A picture of us on our honeymoon, standing on a beach in Greece, smiling at the camera like we had the rest of our lives ahead of us. I picked it up, stared at it. Then I dropped it face down onto the dresser and walked out. I wasn't taking anything that reminded me of her. Over the next 2 days, I played my role perfectly. I acted normal. When Sienna kissed me goodbye in the morning, I kissed her back. When she texted me during the day, I replied casually. When she came home, I asked her about work, listened as she told me about her stressful meetings, pretended I didn't already know what she had really been doing. She had no clue that every night, while she was asleep, I was moving my things out of the house, little by little. I rented a storage unit and filled it with the things I planned to take with me permanently. Books, extra clothes, personal items. Every piece of me that had once been a part of this house was slowly disappearing, and Sienna never noticed. On the 3rd day, the apartment lease was finalized. I had the keys in my hand. It was time for the final step. That morning, over breakfast, Sienna told me she had a weekend work retreat coming up. Ugh, I don't even want to go, but my boss is making us. It's some team-building thing at a resort. I nodded, pretending to care. That sucks. How long will you be gone? Friday to Sunday. I'll be home late Sunday night. Perfect. She had just given me the exact window of time I needed. I forced a smile. Hope it's not too miserable. Friday came. I waited until Sienna had packed her bags and left for her work retreat before I made my move. For the last time, I walked through our house, looking at the life we had built together. This was the place where we had once been happy, where we had celebrated anniversaries, laughed over burned dinners, talked about our future. But all of that was a lie now, and I was done pretending. I placed a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were the photos I had taken outside the hotel, and a note. I know everything. Goodbye. No anger, no begging, no confrontation. Just the truth. Then I walked out the door, got into my car, and drove away, without looking back. The moment I pulled away from that house, something inside me shifted. For months, I had felt trapped in doubt, in confusion, in the sinking suspicion that my wife was hiding something from me. But now, for the first time in what felt like forever, I was free. There was no going back. I drove through the city, heading towards my new apartment, the weight of my decisions settling in. The night felt still, almost too quiet. I glanced at the passenger seat, where my phone sat face down, knowing that at some point, Sienna would see the envelope I left for her. I wondered how long it would take. Would she check as soon as she walked in? Would she even notice my absence right away? Or would she just assume I was out? Would she be confused at first? Panicked? Would she call me? Would she even bother? I tried not to think about it. By the time I reached my new place, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. I hadn't realized just how much energy I had been spending, keeping up the act, pretending like everything was fine when in reality, I had been preparing to erase myself from her life. The apartment was small but clean, barely furnished aside from the basics. It felt cold, impersonal, nothing like the home I had shared with Sienna. But that was a good thing. I wasn't here to build another life just yet. I was here to disappear. I dropped my bags onto the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, and just breathed. For the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend anymore. And then, my phone started buzzing. It was around 10 p.m. when the first call came in. I didn't answer. A minute later, another call, then another, then the texts. Sienna, Callum,
Where are you? Sienna. Why aren't you home? Sienna. Did you leave to get something? I stared at the screen, heart hammering in my chest. She was still playing it casual, probably thinking I had stepped out for a bit. Then, 5 minutes later, Sienna. What is this? I smirked. She found the letter. I waited, imagining her reaction. The initial confusion, followed by a creeping sense of dread. The realization that she had been caught. That I knew everything. Then the messages changed. Sienna. Baby, please call me. Sienna. This isn't what you think. Sienna. We need to talk about this. Sienna. Callum, please. I turned my phone over, ignoring it. Another call came in, and another. T went on for an hour, her desperation growing with each unanswered attempt. Then, just after midnight, she finally said what I had been waiting for. Sienna. I messed up. Please just talk to me. She admitted it. I had known the truth for weeks now, but seeing her finally confess, even if it was just over text, felt different. I could practically hear her voice, trembling, scrambling for a way to fix what she had done, but there was nothing to fix. She was too late. The next morning I woke up to even more messages. Sienna. Callum, please, I don't want to lose you. Sienna. I wasn't thinking straight, it was a mistake. Sienna. You don't understand, I still love you. I stared at those words, feeling nothing. If she had loved me, she wouldn't have lied to my face for months. If she had loved me, she wouldn't have kissed another man and walked into a hotel with him. She hadn't felt guilty when she was sneaking around. She had only felt guilty once she got caught. I put my phone down, got up, and made myself coffee. She could beg all she wanted. I wasn't going back. By noon, the calls slowed. Then, around 2 p.m., she tried something new. Sienna. You're really going to just throw away everything we built together? Sienna. After everything we've been through? Sienna. You're being cold and cruel, Callum. I never thought you were this kind of person. I almost laughed. She had betrayed me, and now she was trying to make me feel guilty? Classic manipulation. I didn't respond. That night, I got one last text from her. Sienna. I'm sorry. I really, really am. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. And then I blocked her number. She had already wasted enough of my life. A week passed, then 2, then a month. I expected Sienna to show up at my office or at my apartment, but she never did. Maybe she realized I was serious. Maybe she knew she had no more excuses left. Or maybe deep down she was just waiting for me to come crawling back. But I never did. Instead, I focused on myself. I started hitting the gym again, something I had neglected during the stress of my failing marriage. I reconnected with friends, the ones I had unintentionally distanced myself from while trying to hold my relationship together. I poured myself into my work, pushing forward in a career that had always been mine alone. And slowly, day by day, I started to feel like myself again. Not the broken, betrayed husband. Not the man who spent sleepless nights wondering what he had done wrong. Just Callum. A man who had survived. A man who had walked away. A man who had finally, truly, let go. The first month after leaving felt surreal. Some mornings, I woke up expecting to hear Sienna moving around the house, the sound of the coffee machine humming, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Then I'd open my eyes and remember, I wasn't there anymore. I was free. At first, it was hard to accept what freedom even meant. For so long, my life had revolved around her schedule, her moods, her choices. And now, suddenly, there was only me. It was disorienting, but it was also liberating. I spent the first few weeks rediscovering things I had put aside during my marriage. I started going to the gym again, pushing my body, feeling my strength return. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had unintentionally distanced myself from when I was too busy trying to hold together a crumbling relationship. One night, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, sipping a beer and staring out at the city skyline. I hadn't felt this at peace in years. There was no tension in my chest, no anxious thoughts running through my mind. Just quiet. And I realized something. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I never heard from Sienna again. Not after I blocked her number, not after I removed her from every piece of my life. Maybe she tried. Maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter. She was gone. And for the first time, I was glad. I wasn't carrying the weight of her betrayal anymore. I wasn't clinging to old memories, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. I had walked away, and I had no regrets. Some people might think that's cold, that I should have given her a chance to explain, to apologize. But what would that have changed? She had made her choice the moment she stepped into that hotel with him, and I had made mine the moment I left. One evening, about 6 months after everything had happened, I went out with some friends. We ended up at a bar downtown, one I hadn't been to in years. It was crowded, the air buzzing with conversation and laughter. I was sitting at the bar, nursing a drink, when someone slid onto the stool next to me. "Hey," a voice said. I turned. She was beautiful, but not in the way Sienna had been. There was nothing calculated about her beauty, nothing carefully curated. She had a natural warmth, a spark in her eyes that caught me off guard. "Hey," I said back. She smiled, tilting her head slightly. "You look like someone who just made a really big decision." I let out a small laugh. "You have no idea." She extended a hand. "I'm Ava." I shook it. "Callum." And just like that, something shifted again. Not in the way it had with Sienna, not an all-consuming whirlwind that blurred everything else. No, this was something different. Something lighter. Something real. For the first time in a long time, I let myself smile. Because I knew I was finally free, and I was ready for whatever came next. A year had passed since I walked away from my marriage. 12 months. 365 days. It felt like a lifetime ago. There was a time when I thought the pain would never leave me, that the betrayal would always be a shadow looming over my life. But time has a way of softening even the deepest wounds. It doesn't erase them, but it makes them easier to carry. Looking back, I barely recognized the man I had been. The one who spent sleepless nights questioning everything, who clung to the hope that things weren't as bad as they seemed. That man was gone, and in his place was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had learned to choose himself. I never reached out to Sienna. I never checked up on her, never scrolled through her social media, never asked our mutual friends about her. She had become a ghost, a chapter in my life that I had finished reading and closed for good. But one evening as I was leaving my office, my phone buzzed with a notification, an unknown number, a single text. "Hey, Callum, I don't know if you'll even read this, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling nothing. No anger, no resentment, no curiosity, just nothing. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need closure. I had already given that to myself the moment I walked away. I deleted the message without responding. And that was the last time Sienna Carter ever crossed my mind. Life had moved on. I had moved on. My work was thriving. I had found new hobbies, made new memories, built a life that was mine and mine alone. And then there was Ava. We had kept talking after that night at the bar. At first, it was nothing serious, just two people getting to know each other, sharing stories, laughing over drinks. But slowly,
Without me even realizing it, she became someone I looked forward to seeing, someone I trusted, someone who made me feel like maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to be pain and betrayal and broken promises. One evening, we sat together on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. She turned to me, studying me carefully. "You seem different tonight." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" She smiled. "Lighter." I thought about that for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I finally let it all go." She reached for my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Callum." And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it.